Hey there, everybody. Third time's a charm. Done this video 3 times. It's tough. I can't see behind the camera, and I'm doing this on a tripod, so if it stops recording for some reason, I don't know. Anyhow, really happy to see you guys out there. You're checking out some of the, your fly tying kits and your fly rods. Very proud of you. Nice work. Just do me a favor. Don't use up all the materials. Know that we're going to be doing this stuff together. And don't forget to do the academic components and check in with me, watch these videos, and follow the directives. There's a lot of fly rods that are sitting dusty in closets because people, just kind of charge out and they just want to fly fish, but they don't do the homework that's associated with really turning into a fly fisherman. So today, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about fly rods. You're going to get to know a little bit about my collection of fly rods here. This is my arsenal. Got lots of them. And I'm going to ask you some questions as to the pertinence of the rods and the intricicities of the fly rods. So first and foremost, notice that you have a fly rod tube. Make sure that when you are traveling with the fly rod, or if it's in your bedroom or whatever, it stays in the tube. These things are fragile and they do break. If you notice, tucked into the case, there was a sock, and that sock, what's called a fly rod sock, and that sock is what the fly rod stays in when it's in the case. You just kind of fold it over like so, and tie it off, and it's got these sleeves, and those sleeves correlate with the heaviest parts of the fly rod to the not so heavy parts of the fly rod. So you've got a 4-piece, 5-weight, 8'6" fly rod, which is pretty much as conventional as it comes for an entry-level trout fly rod. And honestly, I still fish with a 5-weight 8'6" on the regular. So 4-piece at that. Fly rods didn't used to always be in four pieces, but as the materials have become better and better, they have begun being able to break them into smaller and smaller pieces. I'll explain more about that later. So anyway, let's just talk about that in brief. For one, again, make sure that when you're driving in your car or, this thing's hanging around your bedroom, it stays in the sock inside the tube, or else I'm telling you, it will break. So fly rods come in different sizes, different lengths, and different weights. So let's just talk about weights to start with. So the lower the number of the weight, the smaller the core you're going to be going after. So the smaller the fish you're going to be going after. As a sign of sport fishing, or sportsmanship or skill, sometimes people will go after larger fish with smaller weight rods. But for the most part, your average fly fisherman is going to have a rod that correlates with the size fish. So the 5-weight is probably the most versatile for freshwater fish. It can catch anything from, a 3-inch brook trout to, a 28-inch brown trout, or a bass, and that's really what it's designed to do. But you can go all the way down to like 0 weights. I don't actually own a 0 weight, but here I have a 1-weight, and that 1-weight, is really designed for really small little brook trout water. And why would I have a 1-weight as opposed to the 5-weight and that brook trout water? Well, because it's going to give me more kind of athleticism and skill to catch that fish, and I'm going to have more action on the rod. No, I don't advise you to go getting a 0-weight or a 1-weight. Stick with the 5-weight. It's fine. And it's going to do everything that you need it to do. But then I can go all the way up into what I have here. I think my biggest rod I have is it's an 8-weight. Notice this tube's got mud all over it because this is what I chase pike with. So I chase Otter Creek pike with this thing, and it's going to be a rod that's stiffer and able to handle larger fish. It's not going to break or not going to have enough tension on larger fish. Now keep in mind that the longer the fly rod is, the harder it is to cast in tighter areas. But the longer it is, the longer you're going to be able to cast, and you can get away with having a lighter rod if it's longer because that energy gets transferred over a longer area on the rod. So my longest rod is here, which I think is a 7-weight. Yep, it's a 7-weight. This is my steelhead rod. I use the Great Lakes steelhead or Alaska. This is actually a switch rod. two-hander rod, and it's oh geez, how long is this thing? 11'6", so it's super long. So I can handle, a 30-pound fish on this, where normally I'd probably want to have an 8 or 9 weight if it was like, say, an 8'6" or a 9-foot rod. But because I've got that extra 3 feet on it, I'm able to handle longer and longer pieces. So for me, my go-to, my standby is right here, which is a Sage Z-Axis. They don't make this model anymore. And I've actually broken it 3 times and had it repaired. And it's the exact same size as your rod. Today, I fish mostly a 4-weight rod in an 8'6". Right here, that's what I fish most of the time. But when I die, the rod that I'm going to be remembered for my kids, it's going to be that Sage 5-weight 8'6" rod. So we got a lot of rods to fit all kinds of different applications, and I probably almost have too many at this point, but I go after different types of fish, and I use different rods for different types of fish. So the history of fly rods, really, keep in mind that it wasn't until the 1800s that people actually, late 1800s, that people had the leisure time, could go to the store and buy food. So when they were able to do that, they were able to actually go sport fishing. Before that, it was just, how many fish do I catch to be able to eat? And so at first, that fly fishing for an individual fisherman or a sport fisherman, it was the only type of fishing that there was. And that changed over time to incorporate spin fishing. So really, the initial fly rods were made out of hickory, willow, and if you were really fancy and you could afford it, bamboo. And today you can still buy bamboo rods. They're they're pieces of artwork. A lot of GIs in the World War II era brought them over from Korea and from Japan. But they're so expensive that they're pretty much, it's pretty much a muse point. You're talking $5,000-$6,000 for a fly rod. And when we kind of hit the Industrial Revolution, we started seeing other styles of fly rods show up, including things like copper. And that was really pretty much a revolution, because fly rods became more and more accurate and could be produced much quicker. So by the time, we roll into the 1940s and 1950s, fiberglass begins dominating the scene, and plastics just explode the opportunity. You've got PVCs, and you've got different densities of plastic. You've got fiberglass, and so by that time, fiberglass was really the way to go. It's funny; it's had a resurgence. So people do like fiberglass rods again. Usually, it's really skilled fly rods, because the difference is a fiberglass fly rod versus a modern carbon composite fly rod is like a recurve bow versus a compound bow. In other words, the fiberglass takes more skill to use. It's a little less inaccurate, but there's something magical about using that fiberglass as compared to the more modern subject. So this is a fiberglass rod. This is a two-piece rod. And what's the weight on this? I should know. Let's see. It's a 6-weight. And the neat thing about this is from Sears and Roebuck, and it's a Ted Williams Pro model. Ted Williams, arguably the best hitter to ever play baseball, certainly the best Red Sox in history. And I got this at a yard sale from the guy that wrote this book, Harold Blaisdell, and I got it in Pittsford, Vermont. He fished with Ted Williams. He was his guide frequently. After Ted retired, he moved to Vermont, and he fished with this guy frequently. So my guess is that the rod and reel, both Ted Williams Pro models, actually were given to Harold Blaisdell by Ted Williams. I don't know that for a fact, but at least I like to think that's the case. So this is, one of my cool possessions here. So as time went on, we get into the late 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. The types of plastics that are able to be mass-produced explode until we get to, some really, really technical carbon fiber rods. And this type of plastic offers a lifetime guarantee, doesn't break. If it does, they can fix it readily. Today, this is my go-to, which is a Sage Dart 4-weight It's in a 7/6, so it's a little shorter, and it's tailor-made for kind of those Vermont small waters that we fish. And hopefully I catch a lot more fish on this. So the longer the rod, the bigger rivers I'm going to fish. So if I go out to Montana, I'm going to fish a nice 9/6, 9-foot 9/6. But if I'm fishing smaller waters like the Neshabie or whatever, I'm going to go to the waters with as smaller rod as I can get away with. So keep in mind that the longer the rod, the further it can cast and the more accurate it's going to be. But then again, I can't get away with a really long rod if I'm fishing real small waters. So moving forward with that, I've got reels. So the reel correlates with the weight rod. So this is an Orvis Battenkill made in England. These are historic. This is the reel I fish most of the time. It's made out of machined alloy. So it's pretty lightweight, but it's metal. It's all metal, and it's got metal gears in it. And it correlates with the size of rod. So this is a 5/6, meaning it fits a 5-weight or a 6-weight rod. And I can load it with different, what are called, your reel is actually this piece and your spool is this piece. So if I have different lines I want to put onto this one reel, I can do that. Really important to take a look at the drag system and the reeling system. This is called a click pawl style reel, and lubricate those regularly. So with yours, which correlates as a 5/6 as well, it is plastic. It's a high density plastic, so it's not of the same quality, but this is what most reels are made of these days. And you can take that off by coming here, and there's a plastic screw, set screw, that you can open and pull out. And there's your inner workings of the rod. I recommend you put some household oil, not motor oil, household oil in here to lubricate that. Tighten down any of the screws that you see, because these are legendary for coming apart out on the water, which is a big bummer because it's hard to get those screws again. So tighten everything down that you see with a little screwdriver. And again, the line that you see on here is going to be a 5-weight line, which correlates with the 5-weight reel, which correlates with the 5-weight rod. So 5-weight here is a old 1950s style Martin. There you go, Sam. These are cheap. They were really popular. And basically it's an antique. At this point, I use this with my 1-weight rod. Just seems to be fitting. To me, it looks really classy, even though it's really not a great reel. But see, the thing is with the reel, the smaller the fish you're catching, the less the reel matters. It's mostly done with the hands anyway, so the reel is not really that important. You start going after, things like stripers and marlins, or, even big pike. Yeah, that's a different story. You're really going to want to have a more of a high quality reel. So, 1, 2, 3 weight there. And then we can get up into some like big dogs here. This is for my pike reel, Sage 1880, loaded with an 8-weight line here. Obviously much bigger with a thicker line. And we can keep going. Lots of reels here to show off. Here's a 4-weight reel, and again, it's a machined alloy, but goes on my 4-weight rod. This is the rod I'm fishing a lot these days. What do we got in here? It's kind of like, I don't even know. There's my 5-weight. If I'm not fishing that Battenkill, that's what I'm going to use. So let's kind of recap that in brief. Different weights of rods, ranging from 0 all the way to like a 10-weight, with your 10-weight catching sharks and tarpon, and your 0 catching little tiny 3-inch brook trout. That then correlates with a rod of the same weight, and it's loaded with fly line of the same weight. So the fly line is, let's go back to the reels. So reels, now they have drag systems, which means that they'll give resistance when they're pulled, but they'll still pull out. In the old days, obviously they didn't have that. Not real important unless you're going after bigger fish. Then they went to kind of fully machined materials, even for a while, like this Ted Williams one. It's actually automatic, which they were really into in that time, where you just press this button and it actually automatically reels. There's actually no, there's no actually a reel. You just kind of pull up like that. They don't even make those anymore. It's, again, kind of a neat piece of history. To today, where we have high density plastics, we're using that. Our fly line, which is actually hollow, used to be made of silk, or even natural materials like plant materials that were sewn together, or guts that were stripped out and then dried. Now they're made of a PVC style plastic, almost like a rubber. And I'll be talking a lot more about that, the fly lines again. So just wanted to make you aware of how that works. So with your fly rod, make sure you tighten it up, lubricate the inside, make sure you keep it in its case, and it is literally the perfect size for a lifelong fisherman or someone who's just starting to get into it. You could catch a decent sized pike on this, or you could catch a little tiny brook trout on it. And I encourage you to get out there and also take a look at these videos. I'm going to ask you some questions about this, and we're going to move right along. So hope you're all doing well, and take it easy.